In the summer of the year 1219, Francis boards a ship and crosses the sea toward Egypt. He does not go to fight. He goes where the fighting is, which is a very different thing, and for many an incomprehensible one. In those years, Christendom has launched a new crusade, the fifth, and its target is Damietta, a fortified city at the mouth of the Nile, the gateway to Egypt, and in the minds of the Christian leaders, the key to reaching Jerusalem one day. Camped before those walls is an army drawn from half of Europe, made of knights, mercenaries, bishops, and adventurers. Into their midst walks a barefoot friar, thin, dressed in a gray tunic, with a single companion at his side, Brother Illuminato. What he finds is a long siege made of hunger, of sickness, of waiting, and of assaults. Francis is troubled from the very first moment. He sees men who say they fight for Christ and yet live by plunder, by violence, by hatred of the enemy. And on the other side, he sees not monsters but men, soldiers and farmers like the ones he had known in Italy. The crusade appears to him for what it is in his eyes, a road with no way out, and he begins to think of another path, as mad as it is unarmed, to go and speak in person with the leader of the enemy. But first something happens that weighs on his gesture. The Crusaders prepare a great attack, and Francis feels in his heart that it will go badly. He says so openly, he tries to stop them, he begs them not to give battle. They do not listen. On the day of the assault at the end of August, the Christian army advances and is overwhelmed, leaving a great many dead on the field. The defeat proves the friar right, but it brings him no joy. It only confirms that on that side there is no peace to be found, and it settles his mind to attempt the impossible. So on a day in September, Francis and Illuminato leave the Christian camp and walk toward the enemy lines, alone, without weapons, without escort, under the sun. They are seized at once by the Sultan's sentries, taken for madmen or spies, beaten, bound. And yet those two unarmed men who ask only to see the leader stir the curiosity of the soldiers, who instead of killing them drag them all the way to their lord's tent. He is the Sultan Al-Kamil, nephew of the great Saladin, the commander who a generation earlier had taken Jerusalem back from the Christians. A cultured, shrewd ruler, anything but the barbarian that Crusader propaganda described. What happens inside that tent is the heart of the whole story, and for that very reason the sources tell it in many ways, some closer to chronicle, others already bent by legend. What seems certain is that it was not a clash but a conversation. Francis did not insult the Sultan's faith, did not threaten punishment, but spoke of his God with the respect of one who truly believes and assumes a similar thirst in the other. And Al-Kamil, who expected a fanatic or an envoy, found before him a poor man who asked for nothing, neither lands nor money nor safe conduct. The two remained together for several days, speaking of prayer, of the way to seek God, of the worth of a simple life. They parted, the sources say, with a mutual respect that neither of them had expected. Around this core, the tradition has added famous scenes that must be taken with caution. It is told that Francis challenged the Sultan's wise men to enter a great fire with him, to show which faith was true, and that none accepted. This is an episode the various chronicles report in contradictory ways, and historians treat it warily, because it resembles an edifying picture more than a sure fact. Firmer instead is another image. When the time came to leave, the Sultan wished to load him with gifts, and Francis refused them all, faithful to his poverty. He accepted, it is said, only an ivory horn, an instrument the muezzins used to call to prayer, and carried it away with him. That horn is kept in Assisi to this day, a silent witness to a meeting that the blood of a war could not erase. Francis returned without having converted the Sultan and without having stopped the crusade. A few months later, in November, Damietta fell to the Christians all the same, and the horror went on as before. On the level of facts, his journey seemed to change nothing. And yet he had shown the world that one could cross the enemy line carrying only the word, and this seed would work for a long time, far beyond his own life. While he was in the East, however, the order he had left in Italy was passing through a deep crisis, and on his return, Francis would find his friars divided. In the next chapter, we will enter that inner storm, when the founder decided to step aside and no longer guide with his own hands what he had created.